Reserve funds. We'll talk about reserve funds.
That I cry about. They're just not there.
Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, January 16th, 2019, starting at 7:05. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. We're looking at item 2, the confirmation of agenda. Are there any items from council that need to be added to the agenda? Councillor Corbeil?
I would like to add a question to administration, but where do I put that?
Would it be under, is it
Urgent
the one we
business?
discussed?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it could be under urgent business then.
Sure.
Okay, so Jennifer, you and I have already discussed one concerning a notice of motion. I'll come back to administration for that, but we have another one then from Councillor Corbeil. And it's a question to administration concerning
Turf.
Concerning turf at the
Agreement.
at the sports center. So that would be 7.1. Is there anything else from any of the councillors as far as something to add to the agenda tonight? Seeing none from administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have two additions for the agenda. Item 3.1, Recreation Master Plan, and item 6.5, Council Strategic Planning Session 2019. In front of you, you have the additions. However, we will not be adding the notice of motion as stated on your document in front of you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Councillor Peterson?
I would so move that agenda, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? The motion is carried, which brings us to item 3.1. We have the delegation concerning the Recreation Master Plan. Tracy Simpson, welcome.
So I'm here this evening to introduce you to our team of consultants who are working on our recreation facilities and culture master plan. As council is aware, last year we went through a tendering process, and RC Strategies plus PERC was the winning proponent on that bid. And so we're pleased to welcome Rob, Mike, and Charlene tonight to talk to you about the process and how council can get involved.
Thanks, Tracy.
Good evening and welcome to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. You're only going to hear from myself, actually. We're going to try to make it as brief as possible. Realize you have an agenda ahead of you and appreciate being first up on that agenda. The presentation that we have for you, I don't know, would it be on your screen yet? Or oh, perfect. I guess it was right in front of me there. Sorry. There we go. So the presentation has some information in it. I'm going to use it to guide my speaking to you, but there are some questions that are posed throughout. And we gave the same presentation to the steering committee immediately prior to this, which a couple of you are part of. And those questions, we do want to hear from not only committee members but council on some of those questions if you feel like you want to provide us some input. So at the end of this presentation, there's a link, and you'll be able to click on that and actually give us directly some feedback or information that you might want to share with us. We are at the beginning stages of the project. There we go. We are. Oh, maybe. Usually I can talk loud enough so we don't need that, but there we go. We're at the beginning stages of the project, so some of the stuff we're looking for you right now, or looking for from you right now, is fairly high level, and it's about your expectations and so on. But we will come back and engage you in a more formal and detailed way later on, and I'll explain when that happens. So the presentation is structured as such. So there's some introductions. I just want to tell you who's on our project team, because it isn't just myself and our company. There's obviously others in the room here and other companies involved. Briefly explain our work plans, so what it is we've been hired to do and what we're going to do to deliver this project to you. Tell you about the questions that we want you to answer, and tell you a little bit about some planning influences that we know about right now that we know will work their way into our process. So first off, RC Strategies plus PERC is a consulting company that specializes in doing this kind of planning work. So we do it all over western and northern Canada. We're based out of Sherwood Park, but we have people that live in BC and in Alberta. And this is our bread and butter. This is all we do. So we're not a big firm. There's, I think, 8 or 9 full-time equivalent staff that we have. And we're really passionate about this kind of work. For this project, because it has culture in the title, and culture and arts and culture is an important part of the scope of this work, we have a cultural arts and culture specialist on our team called Lord Cultural Resources. They're based out of Ontario, but you'll see people from their firm in the community throughout the process. We also have Charlene here representing a unique flavor to our proposal and our approach. And I say unique, it's unique based on, I guess as we've heard from Tracy, the competition that we had for this project, but also out of all the projects that we've done like this, master plans, and there's a number of them, like if you read our resume, it says over 1,500. I wasn't involved in all 1,500 of those, but a number. We've never used an evaluation specialist, and that's what Charlene is. And the value that that's going to bring to the mix here is we're not just going to help develop a plan, but we're also going to tell you how to implement it and how to measure the implementation and the effectiveness of that plan moving forward. That's our goal and our intent, and that's what Charlene's here to help us do. We also have an architect on our team in the event that we need to look at maybe capital costs or state of your current infrastructure. We have that indoor facility expertise should we need to tap into it. As I mentioned, there's a steering committee that we're working with, which I believe you probably are privy to who's on that and why they were selected and so on. Tracy's going to be our liaison, and I mentioned we will be in front of council throughout the process as much as you'll let us, because we want to give you a chance to influence the plan as we develop it. A couple of ground rules that are outlined in the presentation. So if we asked you what the definition of recreation and culture is, probably everybody would have a different definition. So we've actually taken the liberty of pulling a couple that we know about, and we're going to use these to guide our work. So when we look to identify certain amenities or types of groups or types of activities that we want to look at, they fall under these, I guess, definitive categories, if you will, of recreation and culture. The other thing that we're going to be doing throughout the process, and the first question that you'll be asked to answer if you want to, is to look at what benefits are accrued in the community from our investment in recreation and culture. And they're broad, for sure. And it's definitely, like I said, we're passionate about it, and we can talk about those benefits for probably 2 or 3 hours if you gave us that much time. But we want to know what you think those benefits are. And the one thing that I do want to get to be clear about, and I mentioned this to the committee, is that the benefits that are accrued from recreation and culture investment, they're important and they're broad, but they're also, there's something that can't be escaped from any of your residents. So they can't, even if they just sit on their couch, they're still getting benefit from the investment that you make in recreation and culture. They don't have to be an active participant to get that benefit. And that's what helps justify that kind of service as a public investment, and that's why we can use taxes to fund it to some degree. If you want to know more about the different benefits, throughout the presentation you'll see text with an underline. If you click on it, it'll take you to what we think is the best website to find out more about those benefits, but we'll be preaching that to you every time we get a chance, so the next time we're in front of you, we'll be talking about that again. In terms of our work plan, there's 3 different phases to it. Phases 1 and 2 are pretty much simultaneous, and really they're about learning as much as we can about the community. We do have the benefit of being the authors of the 2010 Quality of Life Master Plan that you guys have and rely on now. I was actually the project manager for that project back then. I had less gray hair back then, I think. Technically I did. I don't have much gray hair yet, but so we have some background in the community, but we need to learn what's happened since, and we need to revisit that because I've done quite a few plans since then. So there's a lot of information that we'll generate, and on the next slide you'll see some of those specific tasks that we'll go through. But equally, if not more important, is a conversation that we want to have with your community. And that conversation we've outlined in detail in another document that you'll get from us for your comment. It's called an engagement plan. And it's going to be a multi-pronged approach, I guess. So there'll be surveys that we'll send out to your residents to get a household or general public perspective. There'll be surveys that go out to groups to understand what group preferences or ideas are. We're also going to do some specific targeted consultation and face-to-face interaction with seniors and youth in the community. And we'll also do some interviews with key stakeholders that the steering committee and possibly you as council and for sure admin are going to help us identify. So it's going to be face-to-face, but it's also going to be survey work. And the reason why we have all of those different tactics included is to get different perspectives about recreation and culture. We want to give everybody a chance to provide their passion and their preference. Even though we might not be able to make everyone happy, which I'm sure you guys have been able to do as council, make everybody happy. We kind of expect that we might not be able to do that in the recreation and culture service area, but we want to at least give people a chance to provide their input. So once we've heard from the community and generated a bunch of background information for you, we're going to come back in front of you after the first 2 phases of work are complete. And we're going to say this is the directions that we think we're starting to see materialize out of this learning that we've done. But we're going to give you as council and the steering committee a chance to influence that. So you're not going to we're not just going to blow a draft plan at you and expect you to say yes or no to it. We want to involve you before we even develop the draft plan. And that's the next time you'll see myself and members of our team. So this slide just outlines in a little more detail some of those tasks as well as the proposed timelines for those tasks. We already know we have to adjust it because of Tracy's vacation on one of the dates, I think. And guaranteed, we're all going to go on vacation at some point, hopefully in this time period. But gives you an idea of the sequencing of the tasks and a little bit more detail of specifically what we're going to do. I mentioned that there is another document, if you will, called an engagement plan that you'll be able to review and provide some feedback on. I'm not going to go through it or bring it up on the screen for you right now, but it tells you what specific tactics we're going to use to collect information, what the roles and responsibilities of different people, I guess, or groups will be, the consultant, the town, and so on, and what the rationale for and target markets are for each of those tactics. So you'll be able to review that and provide feedback, and our goal is to give that to yourself, the committee, and to admin, and get some direction in the next probably couple of weeks on that so we can actually start to initiate our engagement. A couple other questions that we have for you as we get going here. One is, what do you expect out of this? Obviously, as council, you approved doing this project, and you probably have some ideas as to what you want to see out of it, maybe things that will help you make decisions or help you understand the current context. So in your little survey link that you'll have at the end of this presentation, you can tell us what specific types of things you'd like to see. It'll just help us make sure that we hit the mark a little bit better when we come back to you with a draft plan further down further down the road. And then, is there anything specific we need to know about the community that maybe some consultants from outside of the community or consultants that haven't maybe dove into things here for a few years that we might need to know about as we embark on our journey here? It doesn't mean that we're not going to learn as we go through, or we're going to just call it quits if you tell us everything we need to know in this to answer this question. But it's just to sort of prepare us for the work that we're going to be doing in your community. Finally, I wanted to introduce some planning influences that we're going to bring into the mix here. And this is done at a national, provincial, and regional level, if you will. And there are things that pertain to recreation and culture that we know about as professionals, that Tracy knows about as professionals in this world, but not every elected official knows and not every community member knows about. And we are going to talk about these things as we move forward, and there's some links built into this presentation that you can click on, and you can go and learn more about them if you want to. At the national level, the key documentation that we'll reference, one's called the National Recreation Framework. So that's like a rec master plan for the entire nation, if you will. So that's very important. Parks for All is kind of like a parks master plan for the entire nation. And the Framework for Physical Activity is something that the federal government owns and has adopted and has declared that they want to see fulfilled in Canada. And municipalities have a big role to play in that one because you provide the environments for physical activity to occur for the most part. So that Sport for Life, Truth and Reconciliation, some of the calls to action in Truth and Reconciliation pertain directly to recreation and culture. And the Canadian Infrastructure Report Card is another reference point that actually gives some direction for infrastructure planning and infrastructure maintenance and upkeep that before that report was authored didn't exist. So we'll reference that material as we go through the planning process. But like I said, if you want to learn more about any of it right now, you can click on the text with underline and it'll take you to, in this case, more about the National Rec Framework, Sport for Life, Truth and Reconciliation, and the Canadian Infrastructure Report Card. Provincially, there are some policies that pertain to recreation and culture. So Active Alberta is the provincial kind of recreation or physical activity policy that exists. There is a quote in there, I mentioned this one to the steering committee already, that says municipalities will provide recreation facilities. So you've been told by the province you have to do that. Doesn't give you any more direction than that, so you're already fulfilling that for sure. But there are statements in there that are relevant to municipalities and also will help show that you're aligned with provincial initiatives or direction in the event that they have maybe some grant money or some influence to get investment in your community. The Spirit of Alberta is a cultural version of that. And then the modernized MGA, which I'm sure as councillors you're more than aware of and regional collaboration requirements around recreation and so on. And also something called joint use planning agreements, which is another requirement in the modernized MGA, which is going to force you to formalize or at least to revisit your relationship with the school authorities that you have in the community. And I know you've done some really good work partnering with them. We got to visit the new facility already, even before the turf was in, which is awesome. And we're going to be talking about that in a lot of other communities that we go to. But even having a really good project like that probably won't meet the requirement for developing those JUPAs, we call them, because they deal with everything from making sure that you're using facilities or sharing use of facilities with the school authorities, but also figuring out how to identify sites for new schools, disposition of surplus school sites, and so on. So it's something on the horizon, not as relevant as the regional municipal conversation for sure, but in your terms, you'll be dealing with that as well, I believe. Then obviously local influences. So provincial and national direction and initiatives can only influence us so much. They're important to consider, but they're not going to tell us what's specifically needed in Strathmore and in the region. That's why we need to look at some of the existing planning hierarchy or framework that you have in place. So I mentioned we were involved in the 2010 Quality of Life Master Plan. We know what that says. We also did needs assessment for Wheatland County related to recreation recently too. So those are relevant, but so is your broader strategic planning that you have and the county has. And we want to take as much as we can from that in terms of direction to guide decision making and to guide the future of recreation and culture. And as you know, it depends how familiar you are with those higher order plans, but they do mention those services for sure. They just don't give as much detail as we will in this master plan. So our next steps, we're going to confirm our work plan. So if you have any feedback on that or that engagement plan, more specifically about our conversation with the community and you want to influence that, you can get feedback through Tracy to us. We didn't really set a date for that, but I would say within the next week or two, it would be ideal. If you have anything specific to say about that. We've already started our research, and once we get that engagement plan finalized, we will start to have that community conversation. And then the next time you see us, we'll have collected a whole bunch of information. And like I said, we'll have started to think strategically about what to do, how to get more or how to enhance the benefits from recreation and culture in the community, either from what you have right now, your existing investment, or maybe even proposing some new investment. But we want to engage you in that conversation too, and the steering committee. So at that meeting, unfortunately, and I know you guys don't need any more homework as members of council and reviewing material and so on, we'll actually even have homework for you if you want to do it, and you'll be able to provide some direction to us at that point. And I wouldn't expect that to happen for probably another couple months at least, not until we're done collecting information from the community. So that's it. We do appreciate the ability to work in the community again. Rob mentioned this in the steering committee meeting, that it is always really nice for us, and Rob was involved in that project too in 2010. It's always nice for us to come back, not only to see how maybe you reacted to the last plan we did, but also to see how the community's evolved. You have new facilities here, which is exciting, and I'm sure we're going to learn a whole bunch of new things about the community. I mentioned that there's a survey, so if you click on this link here, maybe I'll just show you how it works. You can say allow, it's legitimate. All you need to do is tell us whether you're a member of admin, council, or the steering committee, what best describes you. And then there's just those questions that were in the presentation there that you can fill out. You don't have to answer all of them. You don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. You're adults, you can choose your own way. But if there are things that you want to tell us right now based on those questions, by all means, please do so. And if you do take the time to answer any or all of these questions, just make sure you click this button right here, submit, and then it'll get to us. And it'll get to us in an anonymous way if that matters to you. We will know you're on council, but we won't know specifically who said what. And to be honest, we don't care. Collectively, you're our audience, just like the steering committee is and just like admin is, and we want to take all the feedback we can and use that to the best of our ability. So that's it. I don't know, I said 20 minutes. Pretty close to 20 minutes. I guess I'd field any questions, Mr. Chair, if there are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I see we have some microphones lit up. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you very much. My first question just is to Tracy, because it is related to the initial approval, and just to perhaps remind our public how much we invested in this process when we approved it.
So the budget that we put into the tender package was for 95,000, and the project came in under budget through RC strategies and PERC.
Thank you. And then, as a follow-up to that, one of the things that I am very concerned about always in our meetings is that it's not a particularly good use of our time when we don't have the presentations beforehand. And I know that might be strategic on our part, but it's not appreciated on mine. And I do not like it. And so, coming before council to say, that we do not have the information, often it's because we do not have the information. And I find that annoying. And the other thing is that I'm very happy to see an evaluative process. And I would really like council to have that as a part of their strategic planning, so that we have input into that evaluative process, because it is at that point that we have, I think, the best use of our time, and in going forward particularly. And also in terms of the 2010 master plan, I think that from my perspective on council, only having been on council since 2013, I don't think that master plan has necessarily played out in the way any of us thought it would. And there have been a great many changes and quite a few positives. And so, looking and revisiting that process would probably be useful in strategic planning as well. Some of the things when we approved the $95,000 for this master plan, one of the things that we were able to avail ourselves of was some good evidence-based science, and one of the things that I accessed was the International Journal of Justice and Sustainability, and the Leisure Journal out of Ontario, and they speak a great deal about the role of recreation and leisure and how it might hold in achieving sustainability for social, environmental, and economic factors in our community. And this, for me and for this council, I think is a major issue, because 25% of our tax base is directly related to recreation. That's a huge amount. It's a huge amount, and we are definitely meeting the MGA processes, and it would be good if we could somehow pull that back a little. And so those are some of the comments that I'd like to make that I'm very interested in going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to administration, can we be sent this via email?
Yeah, right after the meeting.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. Councillor Peterson, did you? Oh, just the light is on. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. Best of luck with your study, and we look forward to meeting you again and hearing from you in the ongoing process.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 4, confirmation of minutes. 4.1, the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for December 12th, 2018. Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council approve the committee of the whole meeting minutes for December 12th, 2018 as presented.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. And at this time, I'm looking for a motion to go into Committee of the Whole.
I'll move that.
Oh, sorry, I saw Deputy Mayor Bauer's light come on. Deputy Mayor Bauer?
I'll move to go into committee of the whole.
Thank you very much for that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We're now in Committee of the Whole. For those people at home, if you're watching, just a reminder, this is a more informal meeting. It's a lot of information gathering, questions asked, presentations done by administration, our staff, so that we get a better understanding of some of the things that are coming to face us later on in public meetings for potential votes. So at this time, we don't have any unfinished business, I don't think. And we're on to item 6.1, the annexation of Oxbow Creek lands from Wheatland County. And Justin, welcome this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We're here today, Council, to talk about the annexation of the Oxbow Creek lands. There's been significant amount of work been done since 2012, I believe, and we have representatives here from Civic Works who have been leading some of this work. So we just wanted to give you an update on all the work been done. And what we are requesting is that Council provide direction on whether to continue pursuing the annexation of the lands from Wheatland County. So the subject property is on the northwest side of the town, labeled in red there, directly adjacent to the Lakewood community. And zooming into the site, the landowner is the Telsec Property Corporation, as well as we do have some residential owners that Terry and Neil Weinocht. There are 3 parcels. The largest one is the Oxbow Lands Golf Course, and 2 smaller parcels zoned country residential and agricultural. In total, the area encompasses approximately 327 acres. So I just want to go through the timeline. So my apologies, sorry, it began in 2015. So in that time, the town received a proposal from Civic Works requesting that there was interest from the landowners of Oxbow to be annexed into the town. In March 2016, Mayor Eli of the town wrote a letter back to Wheatland County advising that the town had given favorable consideration to the proposal. Reeve Kuster of the county replied back that they were also in general agreement. In September then, Director Fisher of the town provided the MJ Board, county, and the landowners with a written notice of intent that the town was prepared to move forward. January 2017, an open house event was hosted by Civic Works and was advertised and at the Civic Center. And a few months after that, Civic Works also submitted a fiscal impact assessment to the county and the town, which just sort of outlined some financial projections and was included in the report. A draft annexation agreement was also prepared by Civic Works and was sent to Wheatland and accepted by the county. And of January of last year, the county directed administration to proceed with the annexation process with the town. And Wheatland County also accepted the annexation compensation amount, which was calculated at approximately $92,000 to be paid by Telsec Corporation. So that's where we're at right now. So as I said, there's been a lot of work done to date. So the items to be completed, pending your direction, is that the annexation approval and the compensation report needs to be signed by the town. Both reports were based upon the previous 2010 annexation order, so it's consistent upon the approach that was previously taken. If that is completed, what the MGB board calls is a negotiation report, which basically outlines growth projections, availability of lands, development densities, just to prove that the annexation is in line with the town's growth patterns and the transportation and infrastructure. The report will need to demonstrate sensitivity for key environmental features and also a servicing report. So this negotiation report and the associated documents we have confirmed will be completed by Civic Works. It does need to be reviewed and approved by the town because the town will be submitting it to the MGB on our behalf. So just in terms of the larger MGB annexation process, I've just highlighted 7 key steps. It's quite a long, different process, but right now we're on that 3rd step there. So we have provided notice of intent to the landowners. There has been public consultation completed. So what's left is for us to sign off on the annexation agreement and the compensation. And as mentioned, the negotiation report and documents need to be forwarded to the board. The board then advertises the annexation completes the recommendation to the Minister of Affairs, and then notifies all parties of the actual. So if you do direct Civic Works to move forward, those are the next 4 steps that will need to be completed. So just some items of consideration. So obviously the town has been on, I would say, a challenging stagnant growth over the last 3 years. So based upon the last census, we've had about 1.51% growth. We do have quite a lot of approved undeveloped land through many current ASPs. So we calculated that in total it's approximately 525 hectares of land. Notwithstanding that, many of those ASPs, I would say, are very sterile or dormant. We do have a very exciting new developing area, as you know, through Lakewood and also Coldwell Ranch in the northwest corner. So as I said, the Oxbow lands are directly adjacent to both of those. So if we were to look at some, short-term current areas that are developing and that we do want to sort of build on that momentum and have some contiguous growth in that area, one may conclude this is a logical growth area. Financial benefit in the short-term current, it's really negligible. The taxes we would be earning are approximately $32,000, and you take away the maintenance costs of the 2 roads, it's about $20,000 a year. So we're looking at about $12,000 annually. So very small, but long term, if it were to grow and if it were to develop into a residential area, based upon the density and the assessment prices, obviously through the taxes, that would be a benefit to the town. So it's uncertain to really predict what that would be right now, but obviously we can make a conclusion that once that area does grow, if it does, it would provide tax benefits to the town. One key thing that both the landowners of Oxbow and Lakewood that I've been talking to really wanted to get across was that there's an excellent relationship between the two. In terms of future marketing and bringing people to the area, the golf course and the recreational lake can be considered as joint amenities. Lakewood needs a critical mass to be able to support the lake and the maintenance of that. So, they are open to involving the residents of that area. So as I said, it does create a niche recreational area for the town and to be able to market and to grow, and which can set it apart from the other ASP areas. They have been looking at some joint servicing strategies and service locations, and they do want to achieve some common land use growth in terms of where to locate commercial nodes and also pedestrian crossings. So I just wanted to provide a fair, balanced view of what we've been talking about. So we're happy to answer any questions. I'm here. We do have the engineering manager here and the finance manager as well. If you have any questions about the servicing or finances, and representatives from Civic Works are also here too. If you had any questions about the history, which I'm obviously not as aware of. So.
Thank you very much, Justin, for your presentation. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Justin. Hi. Concerned we're talking about Lakewood, we're talking about Coldwell Ranch, now we're putting more out, and this are really long ways from absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. Where is there going to be any commercial development in that general vicinity? Because pretty much everything that's being developed is all residential.
Yeah. Through the chair, certainly through the area structure plan process, mixed use communities and variety of land uses and forms and are high priority for us. So if and when Oxbow is in the town, they will have to come forward with an area structure plan application, which would have to meet the requirements of our NDP, and we are going to be updating that this year. We are working with Caldwell Ranch right now to ensure that retail and also commercial uses are located in various areas in their plan. So we're kind of calling them neighborhood activity centers. So we certainly don't want to create a residential only community. It's not good planning. We want to kind of move towards complete communities and ensure that the residents there will be served and they don't have to drive into downtown or drive to the highway. So certainly through the ASB process, those mix of land uses will be ensured.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Montgomery.
Would you like to go first?
No.
Okay. I have a few questions. So, do you have any idea how this would affect CSMI?
I would have to defer to Michael on that if he would like to answer that.
The formula for CSMI depends on how much growth we have. Initially, I don't believe that there would be any impact simply because we don't foresee immediate development there. But it may ultimately become part of the equation if we see that development. We're still working on trying to look at amending the arrangements with CSMI, so hopefully it would accommodate that development. But our growth is going to be our growth, and so the various ASPs will get developed as per our normal rate of growth. So it will be either some of the development will happen in one area and some in another. The annexation won't affect the rate of growth, we don't think. It will just affect how spread out that growth is in the various parcels that we have available for development.
Is it something that we'd be analyzing as far as figuring out where that the stormwater on that parcel is going, and if that will kind of cost us more to manage it if we were to take that on?
Yes, that's a very valid question. The challenge we have is if the development happens in all these different parcels and we get a small amount of development in each of those simply because we can only manage so much growth, if we have to develop storm ponds in each of those early in the process, we could be saddled with a fair bit of maintenance for those ponds once they're in place, even though we haven't got all of the development happening around them. So that could be an issue. And I'm not sure how we would deal with that. Personally, I think it would be best to look at the possibility of some of these developments combining some of their stormwater capacity. We were just in conversation with one of the developers today where they may have some excess capacity that they could share with fellow developers.
Okay, thank you. And so, am I understanding that they might be considering using the lift station at Lakewood? So we wouldn't have to.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just based upon our sort of conversations with Oxbow and Lakewood, just want to reiterate that a lot of the engineering designs, and as you're talking about, they are looking to sort of partner with and to use each other's resources to be able to absorb what's needed. So
Okay.
as I said, just based upon the proximity, a lot of partnerships could be seen through the service aspect.
Okay. So, and if this was set up as a bare land condo, would it be accessible to everyone in town, or would it be more of kind of a gated community?
Through the chair, sorry, the new Oxbow
Yeah.
redevelopment?
Yeah.
I don't believe it's planned to be a gated community. It would be sold, or Telsec would partner with a residential developer.
Well, I'm just wondering from
develop
the-
it and then sell it to builders.
From the point of view of because if I understood the report correctly, it was saying that it'd be kind of privately owned and privately maintained roads and whatnot. So that's why I was wondering if, it would essentially be open to, the entire town.
Through the chair, that may have been part of an older report or one of the last ones sent. The ownership and the developers, I don't think have been completely worked out. I mean, I could certainly defer to Civic Works if they have any further information. But as I said, right now, TELSAC is looking for a partner to redevelop how those residential lands were to move forward and to actually develop. We don't foresee a gated community here. We'd like it to be open to everyone. So.
Okay. And so when this was kind of looked at earlier, the Calgary Metropolitan Plan was calling for 8 to 10 units per acre. Is that still current with the CMRB?
Through the chair, my last conversation with them is they're trying not to focus overly on numbers and sort of density. You know, I mean, every community has its own growth patterns and needs. You know, what they did say was that if previous ASPs were, say, approved with being 8 to 10 units per acre, and you're coming in with, say, 2 or 3, that's obviously going to raise a red flag to them. So I think they're looking for us to be consistent on what our MDP says and how our current ASPs have been growing. But certainly, as I said, if this does happen and when an ASP does come in, it will need to meet our MDP requirements that will be reflected through conversations with the CMRB.
Okay. And so if we were to annex the golf course, is that currently considered, like, I guess, non-residential? Would that be taxed at a non-residential rate?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay. And that would be like immediately upon annexation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Montgomery, could we come back to you and I'll just,
Yeah, for sure.
that'll be great. That way we can get other questions too. Deputy Mayor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Justin, for your very comprehensive report. And I really enjoyed reading this and just finding out the process of how this has come to us today. The town has, as you said, 525 hectares of approved land, and that, in terms of growth, could sustain us for about 100 years. The thing that intrigues me about this particular proposal, though, is that it takes something that's already existing and it builds on it in land that makes it better and more unique and follows through with our strategic plan of recreational opportunities and building quality of life for our residents in Strathmore. So I'm interested in that perspective. But what I've often seen with new annexed properties and area structures plans that we're not building the pathways and the connectivities between all of these areas. And so now I'm seeing us move west, and I'm worried that already we have people in Lakewood that have to go out onto the road and into Hillview unless the canal is empty and drained where they can go across. I'm worried that Coldwell Ranch kids, where are they going to go? And will people end up having to drive everywhere from those areas to the commercial spaces? Because as Councillor Cox said, if there are no commercial spaces already in Lakewood, which we've already said, and there's nothing in Hillview, where are these people going to go for the corner store? And where are all the kids going to go for their popsicles and ice creams and bags of chips and that kind of thing? And, you know, the useful things that you need in your household. So I would like to just see if whether or not you have taken into consideration perhaps looking at our the way that we ask developers to process their land and build on their land, whether or not the pathways can come first rather than last. Because as we saw in Edgefield, it caused quite a kerfuffle in our community that we have a school built and the pathways came afterwards. Is that something that you've considered?
Through the chair, connectivity in a town where there isn't public transit, obviously, is incredibly important. And, you know, through each ASP, you know, we want to ensure that every area has those overall connections to the other communities where pathways are planned comprehensively, and that we do have a larger pathway and open space system. So, I mean, part of the MDP is that's one of the critical things we will be looking at, is really how to formulate a larger pathway plan and open space. So when each ASP comes in and when each outline plan phase comes in, that we ensure that the developers are tying in to those different points of connection. And in terms of the retail, I said, just echoing my comments to Councillor Cox, part of the process we want to make sure is that we want to create complete communities, and we want to ensure that there is a diversity of land uses and that there are different retail and amenities for the users there. We have been in conversations with Lakewood, and I just saw Neil, so that's what I'm going to talk about. You know, they are interested to also look at potentially having a new retail zone in the north side of theirs, because I think they see that there will be a really good demand. So as I said, part of the process that we hope to really move forward with new ASPs is to really assure that there's those diversity of land uses and excellent connectivity for the new residents to tie into existing areas that we have in the town. So.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. We'll go to Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you, Justin, for the presentation. My concern, it's a quick little comment or whatever, is for the emergency services and the stress we are putting on them by having them, you know, go that much farther out. I kind of feel that we're kind of developing our like fire department and everything else. We're supposed to have like our 10-minute response time. I don't think it would meet it. Are we going to be putting a stress on the fire department that maybe we shouldn't? I don't know. Like that's.
Through the chair, we have the right man to answer that question right here.
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Corbeil. The 10-minute response time, as I've mentioned to some of you, is a measure that's used to determine the building requirements. But it's the building code requirements that come first. Everything falls out of the building code. So there are several alternatives, building alternatives that are available to builders outside of the 10-minute response time, as well as alternative solutions that could be considered by the developers, alternative solutions brought to the town from the developers that could also be considered equal to or greater than the expectation of the building code. So I would have to say, you know, it's not ideal, but it's not something that's insurmountable.
My question, I guess, is: Are we by building and going and branching out that way? Are we setting ourselves up to need a department up in that area?
Through the chair again to Councillor Corbeil, you do now. I mean, the fire strategic master plan identifies exactly that ability. Our current location is ideal for our commercial development, and will always be in a great position based on our current land disposition. As far as, and so that addresses your daytime risk in your commercial areas and where people come during the day. In the evening in the residence, we're not able to fully achieve the expectations of the community based on where we currently respond to and then respond from.
You're right. Thank you.
Just wanted to add really quickly, we have been working with Lakewood to ensure that all new houses will have sprinkler systems in them, you know, and they are pushing all their builders on that. So as Trent said, you know, there are options to go above and beyond and work with the developer to ensure that the houses that are being built are safe and that they are requiring things like sprinkler systems, which help obviously with those response times.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. We'll go to Councillor Sobel, and then we'll work our way back to Councillors Cox and Montgomery. Oh, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, one question it's in regards to a few comments in the reports that deal with additional costs in the future pertaining to road upkeep, and specifically on Township Road 244 and Range Road 254. Can you just provide us with some additional information as to where you see that going?
Through the chair, so if this were to come into town lands, those two roads will come under town maintenance. We have had a quote through our operations manager, who said it's going to be about $20,000 annually to maintain those roads. When the developer comes forward with their outline plan, their land use to actually begin the construction, we would be asking those roads to be paved and to bring it up to an urban development standard. And much like any other roads in the town, we would take over maintenance of that. And the new property taxes earned will help to kind of offset some of those maintenance costs.
Thank you. So that is a developer expense?
To pave the roads?
Yes.
Yes, sir, yeah.
So just in regards to who maintains control of the lands, I see on page 17 of 98 on, which is Committee of the Whole, or I'm sorry, let me put it to you this way. It's page 4 of the Civic Works report of November 25th, 2015. It says the affected portions of Wildflower Road, North Boundary Road, and Range Road 254 would remain under the control of Wheatland County.
Sorry,
Is that an error, or?
I may defer to Civic Works who wrote the report. I don't, my understanding is that when those roads come into the town, they will be under the control of the town, and the standards of the roads will be upgraded when the development moves forward.
Yeah, I'm just trying to go into this eyes wide open. I'd just like to get that clarified. Yeah, exactly.
Those are the two contingencies in the table.
Yeah.
So the one column that you're reading from
Yeah.
suggests that if these lands remained out of the town, you would then not have to control those roads. If they were annexed in, you would.
So we're certainly not going to annex them in.
If you,
Right, Tom? All right, fair enough, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. We'll go to Councillor Peterson for her first comments and questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Justin, one of the things, your report certainly, your mindful report certainly reminded me the high stakes of municipal boundary change, especially in the CMRB world of slightly out of focus parameters at this point. I don't know how to say that kindly. I'm wondering, in thinking about that, and I don't expect you to answer today because you haven't any time to think about it, but in future, when it comes back for decision, about the disparity in regarding the fiscal strength of local authorities relevant to this and under the guidelines of the CMRB. That's something I'd be interested in the future. And the other thing that I found interesting about thinking about the things that other councillors have talked about here tonight in terms of everything from roads and ponds and connectivity. ISL did the plan for Airdrie just quite recently when they were doing theirs, and they're the fastest growing community in Canada. But one of the things that I found really interesting was when they talked about intergovernmental relationships relevant to lifestyle cost point, that they were recommending that Airdrie could lower that and that would bring people. Of course, they didn't because they don't have to, but that would certainly be something, but when that whole plan they did around intergovernmental relationships would be something really worth looking at through the process of the CMRB into the future for us related to growth and to shared growth at some point. I think it would be really worthwhile considering. And I thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Just before I go to Councillors Cox and Councillor Montgomery again, I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. One was, you mentioned the partnership between Lakewood Meadows and this potential Oxbow development as far as the lift station. We had a bad experience with the lift station recently. So my concern and my question is that if there were to be more development in Oxbow and Lakewood does take off, as they say, because it becomes a really nice amenity for those two areas to bring, is that lift station able to handle the material that would be coming on stream? Or are we going to have to look at upgrading, and if so, who pays for the cost of upgrading and making that lift station better able to suit it?
Through the chair, I'll be able to answer as much as I can, and then I'd like to defer to Michael as well. My understanding is that there is a capacity on that lift station.
100 units.
So obviously, if and when that does exceed. There need to be a discussion between the developers. I don't have experience of who would be paying. I would assume that it would be the developers who would be responsible as they're bringing the density to that area. Michael, is there anything else you'd like to add? Well,
Sure, I can talk more about the history of that one. Hi, Council. Yeah, I'll speak briefly to that. So any upgrades to the lift station would be on the developers, and I'll phrase this politically, and I think the developers, be it Lakewood or be it a future developer, would understand that the facility would have to be built to a proper standard, as opposed to lesser standards. The department's being a lot more, I'll be honest, a lot more hard in terms of enforcing standards and making sure that facilities that the town is gonna own are built to a standard that we want to take on, rather than we have to take on and properly upgrade or replace because it wasn't maintained properly. So any expense to upgrade the facility, and I'm not sure that it does, I think there may be more than 100 units there, whatever the case, any upgrades would be on the developer.
Your worship, just relevant to that? We do have an agreement though for 100 units, right? That's the limit on that. I'm pretty sure that was the limit.
Prior to some of the trunk upgrades, yeah.
That's
the
correct.
big one, the 100
Yeah,
units.
the 100 units is the big one.
That was a legacy of that old sort of pincer of a
Yes, around it,
Centric
yeah.
master plan.
Yeah.
And now, council may recall, I want to think it was a year ago, we approved sort of changing that strategy up, so there's still.
Less than a
the
year,
upgrades.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there still would be the upgrades required to the trunk main, which would come out of off-site levies, so there's no cost there. So levies would upgrade the trunk main, and then that would allow the lift station to be, to serve more units. Trying to avoid that, trying to make sure I'm choosing my language right.
Thank you very much. That takes care of that. One last question, then I'll go on to these other councillors. Justin, in your opinion, Deputy Mayor Bowers alluded to that in reference that we have enough land for 100 years. Are there some dangers of having too much developable land? If we add this, do we negatively impact developers who already have ASPs and subdivisions in place? Or is it like the 13 ways to kill a community that competition is good?
Through the chair, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, as I said, through some past conversations with some developers and people who know some of the developers, as I said, there is a notion that many of our lands are very sterile or dead. It's going to take a huge boom for those individuals to come back into town. As I said, from a pure planning standpoint, I think we are excited about the future of Lakewood and that niche and that amenity. I think Councillor Bauer's point about building on something that's existing as a golf course, I think is a great point. I never actually thought of that, so I thank you for bringing that up. So I think that's another positive, that you're building around an existing amenity. Certainly if there were other developers in the room who've been waiting on land, they may tell you otherwise, that they obviously want to protect their interests. There's really no way to tell
And that's a
how far they are.
Sorry, that's a good point, Justin, because we do want to make our town attractive to the biggest market nearby that we could potentially attack is the Calgary market, to try to lure people out here, and that could be seen as an amenity, a golf course and a lakeside community. So thank you for that. We'll go to Councillor Cox and then finish with my good friend Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my next question is a little bit, just because I'm naive. On page 85 of 98, it talks about the compensation of taxes.
Yes.
And, I mean, 2018's already gone by, so first question is, has the $30,852 been paid?
Through the chair, no. I'm just going to bring up a slide here because I knew
That one.
question would come up. So my understanding is that part of the 2010 annexation that went through, this was the formula of tax revenue that would be returned to the county. So you would take the total taxes on that land. The first year you would pay the full amount, and then each year it would decline by 20%. So based upon last year's taxes, I believe it was 30,852. So if it were to be annexed, we would have to update it based upon 2018 taxes.
So it'd be 19.
Yes, and then, so from 2019 to 24, 20% it would be declined back to the county. And as mentioned, Telsec Property Corporation have committed to pay that amount. So the town would not be paying that.
But then in reading all of that literature that you put in here for us to read, it also states that we would then be charging the same amount of what the county was charging.
Yes.
So we would only be getting 30,000 and you have.
Yes.
And you've.
12,000 actually.
No, well, the first year we would get, well, we would get it all.
Minus 20,000.
Every
We
year.
would get it all because
Yeah, every year.
Telsec Property Corporation are paying.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then, when you were speaking to Councillor Bauer, sorry, Deputy Mayor Bauer, you indicated that it would cost 20,000. So technically, we're only gonna get about
Well, we would
10,000 of
still-
that, because 20 of it is going to be going to maintaining
Yes.
those roads.
Yes, yes, so my slide that I did have about the finances, I believe, I did say there was a net.
Oh, sorry, is there something you could address from the gallery?
If I may, your worship, my name is Christy Bunder, I'm city clerk, so I've been working on this whole time. Respectfully, the compensation is paid the year that you get the property within your boundaries. You're also receiving tax in those years. So you're getting compensation plus tax. Additionally, the formula that's outlined in the report was that suggested by Wheatland County. We haven't had an opportunity to go through the annexation agreement with town council, and you can vary the compensation formula as you desire. So there, if you're not comfortable with this compensation formula, we can look at another one. This is the one that the county had suggested to the town.
So, if I might, your worship, that was my question with regards to the disparity in fiscal strength related to this. Yeah, I appreciate that, thank you.
Councillor Cox, does that help, or do you need some more clarification?
You want further negotiation?
So you would like to see that revisited if we
Yeah,
decide
for
to
sure, I would
annex?
like to see that revisited. I just don't see that granted that you have said $12,000, I'm just, in my head, 20 away from 30 is only the roads.
Yes.
So how are we getting to 12?
So the
'Cause that's only
property
10.
taxes will be earning, so the updated 2018 property taxes from the county's rates, which I asked our assessment to do, is around 32,000.
Okay.
So the taxation commentary, that's one
Okay.
of my attachments, suggests that based upon the county tax rate, we'd be getting 32. So that one was completed last year, so it's
Yeah.
1,000 more, minus the
And is the roads the
20,000
only
maintenance.
expense that we would have then on that? For,
it depends. I mean, there's maintenance costs on the road.
Storm ponds?
Yeah, right now, that's what we're estimating.
Following up on Councillor
you.
Cox's question, would we have to do any kind of a thorough investigation of that road to make sure there's no big maintenance that would have to be done if these lands were brought in?
I would certainly suggest doing some due diligence on that, absolutely, to make sure
Okay.
that the maintenance is only 20,000. But
Okay.
it was reviewed by the operations manager, so.
Thank you.
he
But
was okay with that number.
to annex it first.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, absolutely.
Councillor Cox, are you good now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Councillor Montgomery,
Thank
welcome
you.
back.
Thank you again, your worship. So I guess like one question I had, like as I was reading this report, is some of the information seems out of date. Can we expect that we would be able to get an updated report that kind of more accurately reflects the, let's say, facts of the day right now?
To the chair, sorry, which section were you?
Uh,
referring to, Councillor?
Well, like just any number of projections, you know, even like the kind of population growth projections. You know, like here's a quote from page 68. It has been assumed that the town would continue to receive capital grants from senior level governments at a rate consistent with current and announced grant funding. I think that's, you know, like in my opinion, that's probably not true. So like just like, you know, like if like I guess like, you know, like some of our decision is going to be based on, you know, like the kind of the data, and so if it's not, you know, like accurate, then, you know, we're kind of not making a decision based on accurate information, obviously, so.
Through the chair, my intent, because there was obviously a lot of background to this, which many of you are new to council, obviously, and I'm new to this position, my intent was to provide all the background information. So obviously something that was written in 2015 may not be accurate today. If there's anything specific as part of some of those reports, I can certainly ask Civic Works to update those and any of those growth projections. I would say the cover report that I wrote in terms of the summary and the tax assessment summary that our own department did, I would say is to date and based upon.
Yeah, like your report was, I felt fine. It was just the civics work, like I said, it was kind of relying on old information. So, you know, I just think that it would be beneficial for us to be able to
some of the
review
commentary
it.
from our tax assessment team certainly, concluded that some of the growth projections based upon in that report were quite optimistic.
It's also an economic shift.
And, you know, because it really showed a very
Aggressive.
constant growth curve, and I think the conclusion the manager made here was that it's probably going to be more of a sawtooth growth pattern. So maybe certainly 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that was the pattern that was anticipated. I think some of the more recent was trying to provide recent overall context to that report. So.
Okay, yeah, like I would say, like for my own, I would like to have updated information before I was to make a decision. And then I guess like my final question would just be to do with like the money that we have to outlay for any sort of infrastructure. Are we going to be trying to figure out at what point, you know, like with like as far as like, you know, them being developed, that we are going to start, you know, recouping our money that we are going to be expending to kind of put infrastructure out that far?
Through the chair, most of those costs will fall onto the developer, Oxbow. You know, they will be responsible for installing and extending services. The town then obviously takes over maintenance of some of those, whether it be road or sidewalks or parks, things like that. So, you know, through future residential taxes or non-residential taxes, we hope that will offset some of those costs. But some of those larger infrastructure items would be borne by the future developer of the site.
Okay, like I noticed it mentioned like a road that would be built kind of in between Lakewood and Oxbow, if I'm understanding that correctly. Would that be on us to do?
Through the chair, if there was a connection planned and we work between the two ASPs, that would be a joint responsibility of Oxbow and Lakewood.
Okay. Okay, all right, well, thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery, and thank you, Justin, for your report. Quick question through to the administration table. Will we be looking to bring this forward at the next meeting as far as a motion to direct staff? Is that what you're looking for from us? A motion to direct staff to pursue the annexation or not, considering there's money involved as far as that servicing of that north boundary road?
If I may, through the chair, what would be useful, I think, for us would be it was listening to all your concerns and finding out where your collective issues are, and I think it would be to our benefit is to go back to the table and develop a recommendation to council. We certainly have some questions to answer, and there's some more things we need to look at in terms of the compensation review. And then come back to council with one or two options on what you could do based on the information I think we've got.
Thank you.
And I think we've got enough to go.
And at one time, there were plans to have an 18-hole course there. Is it staying at 9, or have you folks decided?
Staying at 9.
Okay, thank you.
May I make a couple of comments?
Sure, yeah, we want to get some information. This is information gathering, so yeah, please, you can approach the microphone if you want. Ryan's kind of grumpy.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to answer some questions. So with regard to stormwater, we've already set up a reciprocal agreement with Lakewood that our storm would go into the North Pond, so that it always had a water level in it as it was designed to have. If they don't have us for stormwater, they won't have the water levels that they desire to make that an attractive amenity. The Bearland condominium question. So when I originally approached council, Councillor Peterson had said, do not make this a maintenance obligation on our town. And so I have at every opportunity tried to design this and promote this and tool this in such a way that there is no maintenance obligation on the town. And with regard to like ownership under a Bearland condominium, what we're trying to do is work jointly with Lakewood Meadows in such a way that the lake and the golf course amenity are selling features. So you can buy a lake membership and have a membership at Oxbow. Oxbow will still remain open to the public. It has to in order to survive, but we'll have that reciprocal arrangement so that there could be the community associations working together with the golf course and the lake. We also have opportunities to network our pathway systems. We have a Class 5 wetland that is spectacular that we want to maintain and showcase. We have ravines, we have the WID canal, we have a lot of really amazing natural features that would make terrific selling points for this property. With regard to mixed use, the mixed use opportunities are there. Commercial opportunities are there. I think we need to go back to the drawing board on what those look like, given how the town has grown over the past number of years. I always promote this town. I've always felt that the hospital and the community, the recreation facilities you have, like if I had a boy in minor hockey, I'd live here. Like it would be amazing. So I think we've really, really tried to meet the expectations of council. Council also was very clear that they wouldn't spend a dime on any of this. We've done it all at our expense and at Telsec's expense. Many of these reports have not been reviewed formally by town administration. So when you're saying, well, there's deficiencies here, there's missed assumptions here, that's because there hasn't been an opportunity for town administration to come back and say, well, you've missed that, or we'd like to reconsider this. So we're very much open to those comments. These reports are getting outdated, and that's my concern. Our consultation's getting outdated, these reports are getting outdated, and we need some direction from council. And I want to thank Justin and Ryan for putting this before you today.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson, did you?
Yeah, I just have a brief question. You know, going back to the ISL report that Airdrie did under much different circumstances, but I was really, and it didn't work out for them, but I was really intrigued and relative to what you just talked about all the opportunities there are for collaboration among, you know, intermunicipal groups and intercommunity groups or intra-community groups. In future consultation and with the partners, I really think that there's some opportunities here, especially with the parameters that are trying to be established by the CMRB.
I think so too. Just the target market and the amenity opportunities and the ability for the town to support young people is truly strong, and I really like to capitalize on that.
And I don't think that this community has yet to really, or at least developers in our community have shifted to think about that price point, that price point availability in a declining economy for that lifestyle cost that could exist in this community.
You're bang on. You're bang on.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for your comments, Denise Peterson, Councillor Peterson, and Justin, thanks for all your work. If you're having any informal chats with Lakewood, folks, if you're having any informal chats with Lakewood, you know, maybe mention to them we'd love a pedestrian bridge linking Hillview and Lakewood Meadows. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's right there. I know he is. Thanks, just thought I'd get that out there. Thanks, Neil. Item 6.2, infrastructure update. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak to you about all of the activities that the Infrastructure Department is planning for 2019. Frida and I will be sharing this presentation. We have quite a number of slides to go through to give you all of the activities, and we'll only be speaking momentarily on each. So please, if you feel that we're very incomplete or we've glossed over something, please interrupt either Frida or me to ask questions.
Mike, I don't believe we're allowed to anymore. We've been given strict regulations about presentations, haven't we? About interrupting.
Unless it's about getting the.
Point of order.
Oh, yes.
Excuse me, point of order,
sorry.
you're interrupting.
Oh, sorry. You're right, and I should have realized that. It's a tick, thanks.
So the first thing we'd like to do is talk about the department structure. As you're probably aware, I'm acting in the position on an interim basis, so we do plan some changes. Right now, we have Frida as our infrastructure engineer, Ethan Wilson, who you know is our project manager, and then Kelsey Wilson, no relation, is our infrastructure technician. And then we have Ryan Lazowski on a part-time basis, acting as our development technician. So effective April 1st, we plan on changing that. Our intent is to promote Frida to the position of manager of infrastructure. And we will still have Ethan as project manager and Kelsey in their roles. But we also believe at that time we need to then have a full-time development and project technician or engineer to fill in that gap. My role will diminish with the department, at least that is the plan. And I'll take the role of special advisor. So I will be mentoring staff plus dealing with any of the more challenging issues that may come up and may carry forward over the course of the spring. So with that, I'll turn it over to Frida, who will talk about the various activities that she's involved in.
Good evening, Mayor Council. Okay, so I'll dive right into the presentation. So for these slides, we'll just be giving you a brief update on what's happening with the different projects within the department. So for CSMI, what we do as a department is we review technical documentations and attend bi-weekly meetings to ensure that the requirements of CSMI would have least impact on the town's future development process with regard to stormwater. Because as you are well aware, CSMI is one of the viable options for stormwater management as the town continues to grow. But we are not sure that we'll go that way, so we are still assessing it. We also provide the cost-benefit analysis for capital costs, O&M costs, and admin costs. And we provide the progress reporting to the rest of the infrastructure team and the town's administration. And then we also have staff involved in the CMRB technical advisory groups. So the technical advisory groups provide technical support to the Intermunicipal Servicing Committee with regard to water. And by water, we mean stormwater, potable water, and wastewater. And also we provide support for transportation systems, like how they'll grow over the next 50 to 60 years. And we also process any data requests that support the CMRB studies that are currently ongoing. And for the Bow River Phosphorus Management Program, this is a project that is, they're mainly trying to develop a strategic plan to address sources of phosphorus within the middle reach of the Bow River. And that is between Bears Paw, as shown on the map, and the Bazzano Dam. So Strathmore is within that reach because we have a wastewater treatment plant that discharges out to the Bow River. Right now, our discharge from the wastewater treatment plant is regulated by Alberta Environment. So we don't anticipate that we'll have much change to our regulatory process. But I guess we just have to keep ourselves apprised of what's coming up down the pipeline. Okay, and so the infrastructure department also prepares or reviews the linear infrastructure asset management plan. So this is an iterative process that we go over each year, and we only project out to 10 years. And the assets that we consider are the water mains, sanitary sewers, stormwater sewers, and roadways. For the fixed infrastructure like the wastewater treatment plant and water facilities, the stationary facilities, those are handled by EPCO. So for this process, we just have to figure out what we have in our inventory. We have to document where it's located, how much it costs to replace it, what condition it should be in versus what condition it's in, and then whether we should do something to bring it to the condition that we want it to be in, and how much it will cost. And then we have to schedule that replacement or maintenance.
Point of order, Your Worship. I'm having a real hard time with this because there's stuff coming in and there's great information coming on, but I'm not sure. Without a hard copy of this report in front of me, I'm just having a real hard time with this. So I'd like to recess and provide allow administration to provide us with a copy of this. At least I can make notes as we go along. I'm not sure how much longer you have, ma'am, but I'd really would prefer to have a copy of this report before
Through
I go
the
on.
chair, will you please clarify what report you would like to get?
What we're reading right here.
We can't see it here, Freedom, we can't see it here, and we can't see it there.
It's too far away from me there.
Extremely annoying not to have it in front of
And
us.
it's too small here.
5 minutes?
So you're looking for a
wait for
recess
5
to get
minutes?
it to us tonight?
Please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So
Thank
we'll
you very
take
much.
we need a motion to go in recess? Councillor
I so
Sullivan made
move,
the
yes.
motion? Okay.
We have to come out of committee of the whole first.
All right, we have,
Do you? No,
Their screens
no.
aren't working well, so they can't see.
just take a
No, we're not.
recess? Let's just take
So
a,
I'm just gonna,
okay.
I'll just hit print right here.
Sorry, I don't mean to be difficult, but
No, I can't see you. And if we
I don't
can't
ever,
interrupt.
I don't ever want to see a report here again unless it's in front of us. I don't ever want to see one.
I'll do this every time.
Yep.
That's a good idea.
I'm with you. Yeah. I don't ever want to see it again.
Oh, okay, so we'll just leave this as is?
Welcome back. We took a brief recess just to get some photocopying done from that last presentation. So rather than slow the process down of this meeting, hopefully people back home have checked back in with this. And we're moving on to information being presented concerning the town of Strathmore idea, possible change status to city. Mr. Teedy, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The substantive change in becoming a city has to do with roads and streets. Currently, the title to streets and roads are vested with the province. As a city, the title to streets and roads would be vested in the city, with the city. If the town wishes to permanently close a road, it is required to make application to the province, and normally that is not turned down. But as a city council, they would have the authority to make the decision around permanent closure of streets and roads. The Title II and responsibility for maintenance of both Highway 817 and Highway 1 currently rests with the province. Title transfer, or the responsibility for costs on Highway 817 and Highway 1 do not automatically change with the change of status to a city. However, the province can download at any time these responsibilities on towns and cities, and we've seen that in other jurisdictions throughout Canada. If the town happens to take responsibility for Highway 817, there is 15.1 kilometers of single-lane equivalent roadway within the town, using a factor of $2,300 per kilometer, and we obtained that factor from the City of Calgary. The maintenance for Highway 817 would be a minimum of $35,000 a year. Highway 1 has 25.1 kilometers of single-lane equivalent, and using that same factor, the incremental cost for maintenance of Highway 1 would be a minimum of $58,000 per year. We are unsure at this time what the road structure of 817 and Highway 1 is, and if it would require substantive work at any time in the future. Grants from the province or federal government would remain the same. They do not change because of city status. There may be some costs of rebranding because of a change to city status, but it would be considered minor. With the change to city, it may have some impact as to how others view the community. The city would be one of 20 cities in the province. The initial change to city would have a small impact for a short period of time. Normally, economic decisions are primarily made on location, population base, demographics, and other factors by people deciding on whether to live in a particular locale. The question of city status could be included in the public citizen satisfaction survey that is to be completed in the second quarter of this year. Those are my comments, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mel. Are there any questions from council for Mel? Seeing none. Thank you for all your work in putting this together and presenting tonight. It's answered a lot of my questions, and it's been very clear as far as what we can look at going forward. So much appreciated, Mel. And
Your Worship, I guess
Councillor
the
Sobel.
question I do have is where do we go from here?
Good point.
I'm not, to be honest with you, I can't recall how this got to our.
Through Jason.
Okay, it was a.
I think it was an old administrative inquiry.
Which is great, but where do we go with
At
here?
this
Because
time,
I'm
I
sure that this is
don't know if we, pardon me? We can just receive the report as information. I don't,
So there's no plans to?
I have no plans
push
to
this any
proceed
further?
any further. I was just wanting to get some information on what we might face if we went
yeah.
down that road.
I think it's important to specify that, and especially to members of the public. This is a
Fact
delicate
finding.
issue.
Yeah, so at this point, I was merely looking for that as information as far as, I had questions as far as what would be the potential pros and cons of going to city status. I've gotten the information I need. I myself, I don't need to, I don't intend to pursue it as far as a motion at this time. I think there's a lot of good things that Strathmore has to offer the way we are too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. So I'm assuming we're good to go back now. We've got the big presentation in front of us. We'll back to infrastructure update.
Good. Perfect. Where are you? Here? Here. There you are.
Sorry, welcome back, and we look forward to the rest of your presentation. Welcome.
Through your chair, may we proceed? Yes. Okay.
So we're here. This is the next one.
Okay. So for the preliminary infrastructure growth plan, the infrastructure department has developed a program for regular updates to the different master studies that we need to conduct. And the growth plans are based on census data and ASPs and the municipal development plan. So in each of these master servicing studies or plans, or even the ASP plans, different infrastructure projects are proposed. And so we have to estimate how much those projects would cost and estimate when they should be built, how much the infrastructure will cost and when it will be built. Currently, we are conducting a transportation master plan update with ISL Engineering. And right now, we've finished all the stakeholder engagement meetings and conducting the open house. We've also collected traffic data. And so we are going on to the phase where the future development model for that town will be built by the consultant. And then based on that model, we will determine what the future road network for the town would look like. This project is expected to be completed by the end of May 2019. And we are also in the process of updating off-site levies, specifically for the recently approved sanitary master servicing study. We anticipate that we will incorporate a few projects from the stormwater master study that was concluded in 2018. And when the transportation master plan is completed, we will also update it with those projects. We have to adjust the growth rates using the 2018 census data and review all the project costs and project timing for the different projects included in the offsite levies, and also assess potential sources of funding for some of the projects that will be co-funded by the existing town residents and future growth areas.
Yeah, just perhaps to explain that, there were a number of questions earlier regarding Oxbow. The impact of the growth in those areas will have impacts in other areas of the community, and that's why it's so important for us to do this We want to make sure that the developers pay appropriate off-site levies that will contribute to those upgrades that we're going to need to do simply on the basis of the growth out in those areas.
So each year we come up with a 10-year capital budget, and we only have to be very detailed for the 3-year capital budget, and we have to project what projects might be included within the 4 to 10-year capital budget. And how we generate this is we combine projects from the asset management plan, from the growth plan, and incorporate those into a 10-year capital budget. So for the projects within the growth plan, part of that would be funded by off-site levy updates. And another project that we are, small side project that recently came to our attention is we need to assess the flooding issues that have been reported along Wheatland Trail and Highway 1, along the intersection of Wheatland Trail and Highway 1, as you see that image with the Husky gas station. So we need to assess what mitigation options to apply for that flooding and how much it would cost and when we would need to take care of that issue.
Those are Frida's projects. I'll cover the projects generally being handled by the rest of the staff. The first one is our giant speed bump that we have on George Freeman Trail. I assure you that that speed bump is temporary. When the spring weather allows us, the contractor will be back. And the intent will be to grade out the road so it will be a gradual climb up to the elevation of the top of the bridge, and then that will be paved at that time. So hopefully that'll be done before the summer. We are monitoring it to do any periodic maintenance as that surface is subject to potholing from time to time. So that is part of the arrangement with the contractor. We're undertaking a geotechnical investigation for the storm line and the ponds that will be called collectively Pond 7 in the south end of the pivot fields. That is a requirement of our agreement with the WID for our discharge into Eagle Lake, that we mitigate the flows going into that. So Pond 7 is the large pond is the detention pond, and there are some evaporation ponds just upstream of that, and we're doing that geotechnical investigation. The other part of that investigation is to look at an inundation plan to determine if the dike at the south end of the big pond was ever to be breached, what would the consequences of that be? So that's part of that as well. 7. So these are new ponds. This is now to the east and south of the existing Pond 6. We're also in design for the replacement of the water and sewer lines in the alley behind Lakeside Boulevard. So that process will likely be tendered, hopefully in March. And we have a hard completion date for the beginning of July for that project. We will be installing streetlights on Westridge Road across from where the cemetery is. We do have a budget figure from Fortis, and we believe that we may have some extra monies in that budget, and if that's the case, what we'll be looking at is possibly adding some lights on George Freeman Trail, so if we have some room for that. So right now, we're hopeful that we can do that. We're also doing some design work on Westridge Road. the plan for that would be to take the north side of Westridge and build curb gutter and sidewalk along that section. The south side, we would keep as shoulder, just a gravel shoulder, and the hope is that we can put a row of trees essentially between the rows of the two sets of streetlights, one for the highway and one for Westridge. Hopefully we can put a line of trees in there as part of that project. So it's not going to be built this year. We don't have any budget money, but we're doing a detailed design, and that will give us the knowledge regarding what the budget impacts are going to be, and then we'll come back and determine where we schedule that project. We are looking at some upgrades to the baseball diamond at Kinsman Park, some regrading of the playing surface, and then some improvements to the dugouts, the parking lot, the batting cage. And so hopefully those will be coordinated with the improvements to the park. We have a number of pathway projects. So we've got 3 identified that we're proposing to do this year. 19-1 is on George Freeman Trail, running south along the west side of George Freeman, across from the school. 19-2 is from Strathmore Lake to connect ultimately to Strathmore Crescent. And 19-3 is just a short connection, just near the ranch, so that the soccer fields at the ranch, we have now a full pathway right to George Freeman Trail, and it will connect to the pathway on George Freeman Trail. So we're thinking about connectivity with these projects. So for next year, for 2020, we have Project 20.1 and 20.2. That will connect Strathmore Lake all the way to Wheatland Trail. And then Project 23 is between Cambridge Glen and Sagewood. So essentially it will run through that section. Again, it's trying to connect two areas that are missing a connection at this point. So those are what we have for both this year and next year. If you have a question that comes up and you're thinking of it now. Okay. Okay. We're also setting up parameters for our stormwater pond maintenance. Stormwater ponds are a major asset in the community, and we don't really have any sort of formal parameters or plans for doing the actual maintenance. And there is a lot of maintenance that does need to be done. So we are going to assess all of the ponds and look at what are the real activities we need to do. It is a major undertaking, typically. We've already talked about Kinsman Pond, which is going to need to be dredged, but there are all kinds of different maintenance activities that need to be done on these ponds, and it will get to be a burden over time. And I appreciate your previous question. As development happens, we keep acquiring more and more of these ponds because our stormwater needs are very significant, and we're then telling the developers that they must build these ponds. So we do end up with those, and they are a maintenance burden as they age over time, and they will fill up with silt. The other major asset that we have is our pavement, and it's probably the major asset that deteriorates the most quickly. So looking at strategies where we can optimize how we maintain our pavement is really, really important. A lot of municipalities adopt a worst first policy. And what that means is they allow the pavement to deteriorate so it gets so bad we end up reconstructing it. It actually is fiscally much smarter to look at the timing of when you do your roads, and you don't always want to do your worst ones. You want to do the overlays and the crack sealing on the roads that are on the verge of going downhill more quickly. And so we're going to come back with some strategies for how we evaluate our pavement and look at a more optimal way of maintaining our asphalt. We have a project where we're going to build a bus bay in front of the arena. And we're looking at solving a drainage issue at the front door of the youth center. Likely will be a very small project of installing some additional drainage. One option is to look at, can we raise that entrance? I don't know that that's going to be feasible. I think we're going to have to find some drainage solution there. We're looking at installing 2 more rectangular rapid flashing beacons for crosswalks. One at the Sacred Heart School and the other one at the intersection of Lakeside and 3rd Avenue. We've talked about this one already, the Kinsman Pond sediment removal. I will likely be back to council with a report on some options in terms of alternatives for dealing with the sediment that we're dredging out of the pond. So I'm hoping in 3 weeks' time to have a report back to council. We're also trying to collect fish samples from Kinsman Pond. Our challenge has been is this winter has been too mild and we haven't got the thickness of the proper ice. We actually have the thickness now, but it's the wrong type of ice. And so we're not able to do that yet. We're still hoping over the next few weeks with cold weather we will get that. But so far this winter has been pretty easy on us, and it hasn't been conducive to this. So we may end up having to do this later in the year. We're also looking at upgrading the Hillview Ball Diamond and the soccer field. We want to redo the grass infield and then in the Ball Diamond. And then we need to regrade the soccer field and put in, we need to reseed it, put new grass in. And then both of those would be irrigated so that we can facilitate proper growth and maintenance of those fields. We'll also need to be putting some fencing in. The southwest corner of the field complex is a low area. It's essentially serves as a dry storm pond. And we'll put some fencing around there so that balls aren't constantly running into that area. And then we need to probably put some fencing between the goalposts, the south goalposts on the soccer fields and the residences in behind there. So we are looking at doing that as well. So all of that is we have a budget for that, and we hope to proceed with that this summer. We will be proceeding with the annual line painting program. Because our road paint takes a beating every winter. And actually, line painting is becoming increasingly more important. As some of you are aware, the new vehicles that they're making these days can actually read the line paint, and they use it for maintaining warnings for lane departure. So it becomes that much more important that we have our lines painted, and we may even be having our residents demanding fog lines as well, just just because of that. And we have a wheelchair ramp program. You'll see those purple dots are where we are proposing to put a dozen new wheelchair ramps this year. Depending on our costs, we may put in more than the dozen that are identified here, but we're not sure yet what our costs are going to be and whether we'll be able to get more than that in, but our hope is that we will. We're also, one of our activities is to look at approvals for external utilities. So ATCO Gas, Fortis, TELUS, they're constantly involved in putting facilities into our road rights of way. And we go through an approval process for that in order to make sure that they follow our standards, the alignments don't conflict with our issues, and that they do it in a timely manner. So we issue permits for that work all the time. And another major part of our department is development support. And so that means we do the reviews from the engineering perspective of new development, from the ASP, the phasing. We do the detailed engineering drawing review. We then do the field inspections, set up approvals for construction completion certificates, final acceptance certificates, as-built drawings. And so we are a major part of the development team. Anyway, those are our activities for 2019. We have a pretty small group, but that we are trying to accomplish all of these. Hopefully we'll be successful this year. But anyway, now I'm sure I glossed over all this very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you probably have some questions for.
Thank you very much for the report, and thanks for being able to provide these for us, Jen. I much appreciated that you were able to get these all copied quickly. Councillor Peterson.
Just in one of your first slides, Frida, you talked about special areas. What are special areas?
Special area assessments?
Yeah.
So special area assessments deals with infrastructure that only services specific communities. The rest of the town does not have to pay any levies for. So that requires a special assessment.
It happens because I came from southeastern Alberta from special areas, that's why. All right, I'll forget that. In Highway 1, are we responsible for all the costs, or is the province responsible for some of that?
I think the drainage is coming from.
It's us. Yeah, rats.
We have to deal with that problem.
I thought, yeah. On the Westridge Road and further to that, I don't need an answer today, but one of the things that we continue to talk about is that unsightly area of the trailers south of Corlin Drilling on the end of Westridge, that they were supposed to put up a fence as well, so if you could include that in the beautification project. And then the other thing I was questioning, and it doesn't have to be answered tonight, just wondering if there are losses of parking spaces in the redesign of Kinsman Park. Looks like there'll be some modification of the parking that will result in some parking space loss, perhaps?
My understanding is there's more parking to be developed to replace.
Behind, yes, yeah.
Your Worship, I can probably answer that best because I've been staring at all the various configurations. Ultimately, it will depend what option council chooses. However, a lot of our configurations, the parking lot isn't laid out particularly.
No, it's a sloppy thing, yeah.
Any of the parking lot ones, oddly enough, even with Town Hall in there, some of them actually have no net loss of parking just because of reconfiguration.
And then the one on the Kinsman Diamond?
The one on the Kinsman Diamond, that would depend on what size a parking lot we choose to associate with the Town Hall, because we'd be schmucking, eradicating the parking lot associated with the spray park, but as part of that design program, council could put more parking lot associated with the Town Hall there. But,
yeah.
The instructions to the architects has always been no net loss of parking plus accommodating parking for staff.
Yeah, thanks, yeah. Just the final one is just a comment, and that is with regards to the wheelchair parking, a shout out to Jim Kay, who recently passed away, but he very courageously took the town to the Human Rights Commission to get those wheelchair ramps, and And it's good that he did. It's good for the whole community and good for him. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Sobel?
Thanks, Your Worship. So I have a couple of questions that I've come across. I've been asked by a number of people, and my answer is always, I don't know. George Freeman Trail Bridge, the hump. What was the, can you just tell me why they did it that way? Why they felt it was necessary to put a hump in there? Or a mountain?
Well, in terms of the design of the bridge, because it's a culvert, I guess it just needed that clearance over the water with the new design for the bridge. That's my understanding. The design process preceded me, so
But do I not
that's it.
understand that that's going to be shaved down?
Yes.
No, it's not going to be shaved down. What will happen is you'll see
were
the
told it has
road
been.
will be built up, so it will be a gradual grade to that elevation.
okay.
It's gonna be that high?
Yes.
You won't notice it, though.
No, you won't
Because
notice it.
if you're driving, you won't notice it anymore, because it will be a very, very gradual increase of
Oh.
probably 2 or 3% road grade up to that
That's-
level, and then tapered off.
That's not the
Both in
information we
north
got from them.
No.
But I like that answer better.
Okay.
There's, I think,
Ryan.
Your Worship,
Your Worship,
I
I don't
think-
want to monopolize the time for everybody. Well, with regards to that road design, council recall, we'd originally come back on that road with costs in the 1.2 million range.
yes.
And went back out for a design build on that. And the consequence of that was, rather than sort of building a bridge in place, they went with a culvert. So the downside of going with a culvert is, of course, these things only come in pre-made sizes.
Sure.
So you either get too big or too small. They had to go with too big, obviously, and that led to the hump. So we have to raise it up about 30 cents over 100 meters, so yeah, you would
Fine.
notice it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the reason for that design choice.
No, makes perfect sense now. Next on Westridge Road Beautification Program, was there any consideration to putting an overlay on that road? If we're going to be doing the sidewalk and the,
Chances are we will be, because we are looking at the likelihood of replacing some underground services there.
So that was gonna be my
likely
next
to-
question,
So when
whether
we
in-
do that, and it will depend on how much of the road we'll have to excavate, but the road actually hasn't deteriorated that much. It's actually in pretty good shape considering.
yeah,
But
just,
we
yeah.
anticipate there'll, we have, in our preliminary cost estimates, looked at some asphalt
Yeah.
on that road.
I'm so impressed that we're looking at that. That would, that's one of the first things that our commuters, our visitors come into Strathmore and they see. So any effort in this regard, I think, is well appreciated. While we're talking about pavement also, and just while I think of it, is there any project focused on, what's the name of that road now? Going down to Recycle Yard? Is that next, is
That's this
that
year.
19 or 20 or?
This year.
Slater Way.
Slater.
Way.
This year.
I thought it was 19, yes. Sorry, Your Worship.
Your Worship, that's in for 2019. I think that's just not exciting, so Michael didn't. put
Oh,
that in, but that is
yeah.
in-
It's very exciting for me.
Yeah, council approved that for 2019.
Yes, okay. So Slater Way is being done this year?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's what I mean, so it's not exciting.
All right, and, is there any chance we could have made these a little bigger? I'm just kidding.
You can read it, I'm happy.
I'm just kidding. On project 19-3, I don't have a page number, but 19-3, that little stretch of land, that pink little addition, is the road on the right, is that George Freeman Trail?
Yes, that's,
Okay,
that ties into George Freeman, so it will actually tie into.
We had
paths.
gravelled that part
Yeah.
a few years ago, and now we're gonna pave it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm not sure if I had anything else. Sorry, Your Worship. The other question I had was in regards to Hillview, the Hillview Ball Diamond. I'm assuming from what you're telling me that will affect any use of the field in 2019.
It may impact us depending on our timing in terms of how much we can use it this summer, yes. Because we may need to allow for that new grass to set in.
I would assume so. And lastly, when we're talking line painting, are we looking at different products? Is there anything out there with all the environmental work that's been done to remove any use of this paint? Is there anything out there? Any different? I'm thinking more methods than a product. I know there's somewhere there, and I don't know how much success they've had, but they're actually drilling nails or very thin nails into the pavement and then putting the product in, and it seems to be holding up more. But I'm just wondering where we're going with this, because it's terrible. We can't get away with once a year anymore. It doesn't seem.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges, and we have harsh winters, and it just does a number on the paint every year. So essentially, we have paint that lasts us for a year. It's a problem every municipality has. Where I come from, we could never keep our asphalt or our paint more than, by November, December, it was largely unreadable. Now, of course, in the wintertime, much of the time, especially on the local roads, there's really, the snow is covering, there's ice, so you don't see that paint, even if it does stand up under the ice and snow. But we found that we pretty much have to repaint all of our lines every spring. It does, the timing of when it's done does impact how well it stands up. Ideally, you want to do it in warm weather and in dry conditions. So if it's done in cold or wet conditions, likely it will not stand up as well as if you do it in the right time. And of course, the challenge we always have is we're hiring contractors, that's all they do. So they have a list of 20 municipalities they have contracts for, and so they fit you in where it works for them. So we often have only marginal control over the timing.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. And just lastly, I know this for review, and I know you use a lot of contractors and all that, but a lot of these projects are not small projects. They're really big projects, and they're very, very time consuming. So kudos to you and your group, because you guys are doing an amazing job. Appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you for the report. I'm going to start off just from the beginning. I see that we have a development and project technician for April 1st, 2019 to be determined. Did we not do a hiring freeze?
Yeah.
It's already in? Cool.
I can speak to
Right.
that as well.
I just don't remember that.
You'll notice that, yes, there's that position come in, however, the capital engineering position evaporates. So it's more so transitioning, Frida's moving from capital engineering to manager, and we'll use those funds to hire at a substantial discount the dev tech. It's just part of that department realignment.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a one-for-one swap. It's not,
Okay.
yeah.
The ball diamonds and soccer fields, is that at our cost?
Yes.
The regrading? Okay. Yeah. Are we replacing, because where the loading bus at the arena is going to be, are we replacing the handicap parking, or do we need to? I know that there's one row right across, that's all the handicap parking, but that has, I think, I would want to say 4 handicap parking spots where you're putting that.
That one I'd have to get back to you on.
Okay.
But I'll check with Kelsey on that, and we'll get I'll send an email to council to respond to that question.
Okay, and then my last one. Yeah.
I can answer that question if you'd like.
Oh, good.
So they will be replaced across where you can see the black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there's only 2 there, isn't
More
there?
over there, it's not identified on the map. But we'll be replacing them over there and creating a stronger, safer access for them to cross that drive lane.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a lot of parking spots. The last one, the Westridge Road, where we're putting lights, did we ever decide on an amount? Did we? Okay, just making sure then do we do that during budgets?
Number of lights, you mean?
The number of light standards that we're putting up, we did.
Yeah, there were 6 or 8.
Cool. That's all, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. And that brings us to Councillor Montgomery and then Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you guys for your report. My only question, I guess, would be to administration or you guys. Just that at a certain point, are we going to consider maybe bringing the line painting in-house? Would that be more efficient?
No. It's very specialized equipment, and it would be used typically for 1 week of the year, or perhaps 1 week twice a year. Some municipalities do have small pavers where they'll do some small jobs to augment that. Whether we have enough of a road asset base or enough demand to justify that is something that we'd have to really look hard at. Normally, a municipality this size would not have that, but I know larger municipalities do that, so that if there's an immediate repair, they could do some painting on an emergency basis. We would,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to Michael and Frida for this presentation and to the Department of Infrastructure for putting this together. It's really nice to be presented with what you're doing, like your goals, and sharing that with us. So I appreciate it. And for the first time, I've noticed that there's a parking lot in the Hillview Ball Diamond. I hadn't noticed that before. So is it a gravel parking lot, or will we be paving it?
That parking lot, I believe, is a gravel parking lot, and
Okay.
there's no intent to pave it at this point.
Okay.
It's not part of our budget.
And now I remember us talking about a very, very high fence going up between the end of the field and the residential lots that are there. Is that big fence still going up?
Yes, that's part of the plan. It'd be 2 sections of fencing behind the 2 goalposts that are on the small fields that cross the big soccer field.
Okay, and what's going to be protecting the cars from the balls coming from the diamonds?
Nothing.
So we're going to ultimately be responsible for litigation of windows and that type of thing?
We don't think so. Baseballs, yeah, you could damage windows. Soccer balls, when they're playing on the cross field, likely wouldn't have much impact. It tends to be the younger players will play on those smaller fields going crossways. The larger field would be for the more experienced players that play on a full field. The cross fields are basically training fields for this.
Okay, I just worry about this being a potential problem.
Yeah, if it was a problem, I think we'd probably be coming back to council saying that.
Your Worship, I think Ryan wants to speak.
Sorry, thank you. Deputy Mayor Bauer. Ryan, did you want to weigh in?
Your Worship, with regards to Hillview, I think there's a lot of questions about that. I will be bringing a report on that. That won't be particularly kind to anybody involved. We'll bring that probably towards the tail end of February, talking about the go forward, talking about how we got to where we are.
Okay.
The go forward and steps we're taking to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay.
I think council will notice that it's a completely new infrastructure department with a real focus on staff with the real attention to detail, a real focus on quality, on making sure contracts and some of those details that we've fallen down on in the past are really done properly. I'm personally really excited about going forward with Michael and then with Frida. We're getting a level of rigor on design that we haven't seen before. A level of rigor, again, I keep coming back to contracts, but that's been a downfall. And I think over the next few months, and actually quarterly too, as this group reports, we'll be talking to council a lot about how we're looking to avoid a lot of the seat of the pants attitude we unfortunately had to fly by in the past and move towards a more deliberative approach for infrastructure planning and infrastructure projects. So we'll start that on a nice good old fashioned postmortem on Hillview at the tail end of February and go from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. That's
Oh,
everything.
you're good, Deputy Mayor Bauer?
Your worship.
And my last couple comments and question actually ties into what you're saying, Ryan. The first one is a comment or a question to administration. When we have this report come, and now that this is a public meeting, I think we need to direct our comms department to get ahead of the wave and make sure that we let the public know what's going on with Hillview. Because there could be some scheduling problems. There could be groups who were told that they were able to play this year and now won't be able to. And if we seed, is that going to mean we'll be able to play next year, or do we have to wait for one more season beyond that? Do you know that one?
Your worship, with regards to that, if we irrigate and seed, the intent would be to be able to play next season.
Okay.
Assuming the seed takes right. Again, I won't go into vast details because there's a lot of stuff to go through here, and I'm not gonna.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't want to associate Michael and Frida with it.
Okay.
But.
As long as we get ahead of the wave and this doesn't hit Facebook before we can start to explain what happened and what our recourse is going to be. Second thing, I guess it's not as huge an issue now since nobody's really going to be playing there, but is there any thought of increasing the distance or the length of that playground zone on Hillview Drive when those fields are all operational? They stop fairly early and they don't continue on to where the ball diamond is. So maybe, I don't know if that's something for Traffic Advisory Committee, or we'll probably need to look at extending that playground zone farther down the road towards the ball diamond, but I don't know if that's necessary as much this year since it's not going to be up and running. But that's something we should keep on our radar.
Yeah, it's certainly, we can certainly look at that. That's pretty straightforward.
Okay. 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 Okay, thank you. And Ryan, when you present your report on this Hillview field situation, will you be talking about any possible recourse against anyone for the shoddy work that was done? Are we looking at anything, or are you going to come to us with that information?
Your worship, we'll discuss sort of how we got here, I guess, is how I'll put it, and I'll leave decisions like that for council. No one comes out of this looking good, and I get to be fearless and talk about that, and we'll kind of discuss there as well what the next steps are, and that's
Okay.
what's most important to me is how we can get this to a place where folks are having fun out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be brave.
Councillor Peterson and,
Councillor, Deputy Mayor was.
oh, Deputy Mayor Bauer, did you?
I'm done.
Okay.
I just had it's just a comment. This is regarding the Bow River phosphorus management, and I know that's big, and it's so important. And I guess I'm wondering if there's a time when you could come forward to give this council some information around the nutrient monitoring protocols around phosphorus management and protocols, some of the things that we've learned as a result of Kinsman Lake, which maybe don't have a huge perspective on this, but I think it talks to, mixed layer sampling and all those kinds of things that is beneficial to know about when you're talking about phosphorus management, and especially, the precision of analysis as it relates to our wastewater management, wastewater treatment, and our agreement with the outfall, and how that will roll out into the future. And I know that's a conversation for another day, but I'd really appreciate hearing more about this, and I'm glad that you're there.
Through the chair, we'll arrange that for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. And tied into that, at Kinsman, as far as the cleanup or the drain or the dredging of Kinsman, are you guys going to be coming back with information as to how that's going to be done, where the material is going to be taken? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, I would like to move that we come out of committee of the whole and convert the town of Strathmore to the city of Strathmore. All right, we'll just come out of committee of the whole for now.
Okay, you've all heard the motion to come out of committee of the whole. All in favor? And then Councillor Montgomery?
I will move that we extend the meeting till 10:30.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And Councillor Montgomery?
I will move that we go back into committee of the whole.
You've all heard the motion to go back in committee of the whole. All in favor? And we're back in committee of the whole. Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments? I don't think so. Thank you very much for all your work. Which brings us to item 6.4, Strathmore and District Agricultural Society donation of facility request, page 97. Tracy, welcome back.
Thank you. This report is to follow up a presentation from last week's council meeting where the Egg Society discussed the idea of bringing the RCMP musical ride event to the 2019 Strathmore Stampede. Their request was for a donation of the blue arena at the Strathmore Family Centre for a period of July 26th to August 9th, which is 15 business days. At this time, we have no bookings yet scheduled into that time frame. In a typical year, the arena puts the ice puts the ice back in at the end of June. So we have summer ice on the blue side from July and August. Traditionally, we looked at the past 4 to 5 years. We have a number of bookings that equal about $16,000 worth of rentals in that time period. Given the unique opportunity we have with the RCMP musical ride and that no bookings to date have been requested for that ice, we are recommending the donation and to delay installing the blue ice until after the August long weekend. It's a one-time opportunity, and it would be a great economic driver for our community and something really unique that we would get to participate in. That being said, there are some costs associated. We would be a potential loss of anywhere from, I guess, $0 to $16,000 as or half. And if we use our approved day rates, we currently charge a day rate for a pad rental of $660. And so for the 15 days, the dollar value of your donation is $9,950.
Councillor Montgomery.
She answered my question.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
And I apologize, those numbers weren't in here, but my report was already late Thursday morning when I started it, and so I kind of scrambled.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. I do acknowledge that this is a one-time opportunity and it's pretty unique. I have a question regarding if we could put the ice in, take it out and put it back. The only reason is because I don't think that it's just going to be the town out the money. I think that there's a lot of power skating clinics and individual people who put on things during that time who will be out income. I know they are actually advertising that they are going to be running.
Yeah, so I would encourage them to book the facility. But you're right, it does impact third parties who use our facility. They would have to seek other facilities to use. Summer ice is not easy to come by because it is expensive to maintain. And we have the risk that we may lose those renters if they go to another facility. They may never come back to our facility in the future. That's something that we have an unknown on. In terms of putting it in and taking it out, it takes roughly 10 days to put ice in and roughly about 7 to pull it out, depending on kind of how we put it in. You know, if we were putting it in temporarily, we wouldn't do things like logos, and so that speeds the process up. And it costs about 16,000 or 16. Oh my gosh, it's late. Yeah, my numbers. It costs about 6,000 in terms of materials and manpower if we were to rush it, and it's about 4,000 to do it just within regular hours, so no overtime. So that would be an additional cost to put it in and pull it out. And so we could get it if we put it in June. You could get. You really wouldn't get many weeks because then we would start pulling it out again for their request of July 26th. So you'd gain 3 weeks of ice, roughly. Yeah. The other option, I guess, that we could look at is not taking it out in April and leaving it in and just taking it out once, but that impacts the high school graduation.
And lacrosse.
And lacrosse, yes. So.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Peterson.
One of the things that I was thinking about along the lines of what Councillor Corbeil was talking about was if it was going to cost us $16,000, you know, in revenue and potential loss of future income, would it be possible to think about putting up a structure, like a tent structure, a sprung structure, temporary structure, renting a tent, you know, would it be sufficient?
I don't think they can put horses in tents.
So, the biggest question will be around security. That's their biggest ask, and that's why the Ag Society wanted the arena, because it provides higher security. So that's something we'd have to discuss with the RCMP musical ride.
Yeah, so the livestock
Yeah.
pavilion, you know, that's just to the northwest of the Gold Arena, that's now like the wine bar, whatever. So that wouldn't be sufficient anymore either, it wouldn't be big enough? How many horses do they have, do you know?
They have 36 horses. They use,
Are they not using that already?
It's a wine bar.
yeah, they use it for other programs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm just thinking if you put a sand surface in, I wonder if you could get quite a few, you know, I think it might work.
It could be.
And
They may not want to. I don't know. Isn't there a kitchen or something in there now?
there is a kitchen in there, yes. And so I'm not,
Be easy to water the horses.
I don't want to say for sure that they can put livestock in there with a kitchen. They may
Yeah, I don't
have
know.
to do some things.
I'm very much in
I'm
favor, you know, to me, the musical ride would have priority, but Standard doesn't put summer ice in?
I don't believe any of the county rinks
No.
put ice in.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Tracy. I also echo Councillor Peterson's concerns with not having that ice surface available, and was wondering about temporary structures. So I would like to see that. Well, if we have to make a decision today, of course, that wouldn't be something that we could consider, but I would have liked to have seen that as a consideration. How many times have we had the blue ice surface for livestock in the past?
Oh, lots.
Yeah.
For years.
Okay, and has
Long
there,
time, not in the recent history. Not since I've been here, I guess. Yeah.
For many years. So
Yeah.
from the time that the building, Your Worship,
Yeah.
sorry, it was there for a long time. We had a livestock show there.
okay.
And I would echo that by saying it's very common to put livestock in a hockey rink.
Okay, because I know that you have said the $16,000 would be a loss with the ice, but what about additional labor and people to clean it afterwards?
Yeah, so part of our donation would be the manpower to
Yeah.
support their event as we would for an ice event. And we would, that's part of that donation.
Okay, all right,
And
thank you very
That's why we
much.
consider the donation for every day, including setup and takedown.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. So if there are no other questions, then a little later, we'll be moving to come out of a committee of the whole so we can put a motion. Well, I think we have a couple other, we have a couple minor items. We have the visioning day, and then I think we have a,
Why don't we come out now and do it while Tracy's here, and she doesn't have to.
okay, that's fine with me. That's, everybody's okay with that. So if you're ready and you want to make a motion to Councillor Peterson.
I'd move to come out of committee of the whole, Your Worship.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion come out of committee of the whole. All in favor? We're now in the public meeting. And we're looking, does anyone want to make a motion? Councillor Peterson.
I
thank
would
you.
move that Director Simpson have the authority to offer the Blue Arena to the RCMP musical ride, to the Ag Society for the RCMP musical ride, understanding that the cost will be somewhere south of $30,000 in implication costs.
Thank you. You've all heard that motion? Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Go, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wondered, should we include in there that you're to put in the ice right away?
She knows what to do.
Okay. Well, I'm
Better
just saying
decide.
she's asking whether, like, we've just passed around a discussion
decide.
about
Yeah.
taking in, taking out.
Let her
So-
decide. She knows better
We'll
than
look
us.
into it.
Okay.
And get back to
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Corbeil, question or comment?
Yeah, question, kind of comment, actually, because I know that, I wouldn't say tryouts, but it kind of is, start in August as well, right?
Correct, yeah, so a lot of the spring camps, the summer camps, and they don't call them tryouts, they call them
I'm trying to think of it.
evaluations.
Yeah.
Start in August
Yeah.
after the long weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would it affect it?
It may affect it by a couple days.
10 days to get in.
We'd be putting both ice back in at the same time, which we don't typically do, and so it may delay it a couple days, but it wouldn't take twice the 10 days. We'd be able to, because there's lots of downtime between layers and stuff like that, so we'd be able to balance it But we've never done it before. We've never put both back in at the same time, so. Yeah. It's a possibility.
And again, just a direction to administration, Jen, if you wouldn't mind jotting this down. We would want to let our comms department know to make sure well in advance that they advertise that this is a special event. It's the RCMP musical ride. It will go a long way to help support the Strathmore Stampede and the town itself. So it's a rare thing.
And maybe contact the Strathmore Minor Hockey in advance.
Yeah.
We would contact all past running
Perfect.
groups and make sure they're aware and do whatever we can to support them finding a new venue.
Thank you. If there's no more discussion or questions, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
Move to go back into committee of the whole.
Thank you. We have a motion to, Jennifer?
Your worship, we don't technically need to go back into committee of the whole for the next item because we're asking for a motion on it.
Okay. So that is the item dealing with Divisioning Day for Council, item 6.5. Jennifer, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Administration has been trying to set a date for council's strategic planning session. Sorry, my microphone's going. And we have a few recommended dates in the report in front of you, all for the end of February. We've also included in the report just a very preliminary draft agenda, which includes some topics that council has mentioned over the past few months to be included. In that agenda, we are including parking lot items that council listed during the 2018 budget deliberations, as well as some of the capital projects council was interested in having administration look into. And we're really just bringing it forward to council for discussion tonight to see if there's anything that we're missing for that agenda, and also for council to please set a date for that session.
And did you mention any date options for us? I might have missed that.
Yes,
Sorry.
Your Worship, they're
Oh,
in
I
the
didn't even
report.
see that on my sheet. Councillor Cox, did you say you're back by the 25th?
Yep.
So you're available that day?
Yes.
Let's vote on who's available for the 25th.
I have handy bus that day.
Is that a day where you could miss one committee meeting? Is that, I mean, not everyone makes it to all committee meetings. That could be one where a councillor would miss if we feel.
She's also available on the 27th.
Okay, how's the 27th for everybody?
Oh, you're not? No.
Bingo. So do you need a motion for that, Jen? Okay, so we're looking for a motion. Councillor Corbeil?
I move the council hold the council strategic planning workshop on February 27th, 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
And that's an all-day thing?
Your Worship, we were just going to ask and clarify what time council would like to start and end.
Administration question,
Sure.
sorry,
Councillor
or
Cox.
through the chair to administration. Is this an opportunity for reimbursement? Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Yes, thank you.
And following that question, Jen, based on what you think could be the agenda, do you have any idea of what kind of length of time this group might need?
Your Worship, it is administration's intent that we complete the session in one day, depending on what council.
Do you need time specific? You don't need time.
24 hours.
So we'll just wait to hear your time parameters that you're giving us? Or do you want us to set the times too?
Yeah.
Not 7 to 7 though, please.
If, Your Worship, if council sets the time for, then we can accommodate and prepare the agenda as necessary.
9 to 4 sounds way better than 7 to 7 to me.
8 is even better than 7.
Let's do, what about 9 to 5? The typical.
8:30 to 4 is nice.
9 to 5, and we'll go for dinner.
Okay.
I'm liking your style. Oops. All right, item 6.5 is done, so we move on to item 7. Okay, we're on item 7, urgent business, and Councillor Corbeil had an item on 7.1.
Thank you, Worship. I was just wanting to know at what point or where we are with making an agreement in regards to the turf we're going to rent from Chestermere. They are not going to book, and I think that's all of soccer. They're not going to use the facility until, obviously, there's stuff in it. I just got that message today.
For sure, yeah, and we wouldn't expect them to use it on concrete. So we've reached out to them. Right now we're working on the logistics of getting the trailer out of the farm yard into town. There's a few things that they have to do on their end. The trailer's not licensed anymore, so it needs to be licensed before it can come onto a road.
Is this trailer, is the storage trailer holding the turf right now?
Correct,
Oh.
yes. But we're working with soccer and the farmland owner, and we anticipate to have it installed, ready to play on no later than the
Sorry,
1st
that's
of
not my
February.
issue. No,
Oh.
they don't care about that. There's no agreement between the town and Chestermere for
Yes.
using the turf.
We are
That's
working-
what I was talking
We are
about.
working on that. We've drafted one, and we're just trying to set up a meeting with Dave. We just haven't been able to
Thank
nail
you.
something down. Yeah.
Could I just come back to that turf just again? If it's in a trailer, it's all been seen, like it has been taken out and rolled out and we've seen the entire turf?
No,
How do we know it's good if it's in a trailer?
we don't. And that was part of the discussion we had is.
Okay, I don't remember it being stored in a trailer though, in a farmer's field. I don't remember
We've looked
that.
at it, and from what we can tell, it's in good shape. but
Okay.
We have not rolled it out. We've
Okay.
never had the space to roll it out.
And your worship, sorry,
Councillor
through the chair. And when we do have this agreement, it will state if it's falling apart when you roll it out, then the agreement's null and void?
Yeah, if it's not playable, it won't be something we can use. Correct. Yeah, yeah, and keeping in mind that safety is the top of mind for everybody involved. They're not going to want their participants playing on it either if it's not safe to use.
Okay, so you'll be getting back to us as far as that goes, or it's just a plan, you're gonna work things out with Chestermere and it's an operations thing?
We can report back if you
Perfect.
wish.
Yeah, that'd be great, just so that everybody has peace of mind.
No problem.
Thank you very much. That brings us to, that's good, Councillor Corbeil, you're fine with that? Okay, that brings us to in-camera. We have no in-camera items, and we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Councillor Corbeil has made a motion to adjourn. All in favor? And we are adjourned.